What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Existential Stoic podcast, episode 52. We have made it a whole
Wow.
year. I'm Randy. That's Danny. What's up, Danny?
What's up, Randy? I can't believe we made it a whole year already.
This is incredible. I mean, I remember like a
It
year
really
ago,
is.
we were just sitting in your car chatting, and we're like, we should record this and put it on the air. And then lo
And
and
lo and
behold,
behold,
yeah, 52 weeks later, still doing it. All right.
still do it.
Yeah.
And
So
we have plans for season 2, which means we're not stopping.
I know. Why bother stopping? This is so beneficial. And actually, that brings us to the topic for today's
Ooh.
episode, which is lessons learned from a year of the Existential Stoic podcast. We're going to be talking about things that we both learned, the good stuff of this year, maybe the bad stuff of this year. But I know myself, I have definitely grown a lot this year doing this with you. And
I've grown a ton. It's been awesome. Yeah,
Mhm.
it's like literally, I think we've said it before, better than any therapy I can ever have,
100%.
right?
100%.
Yeah,
Because it's, I
I
mean,
love it.
for the mere fact alone that like we get to chat at least once a week, like how many people that regularly chat with a good friend? Probably not
Yeah,
that
I
many.
think that is like, yeah, no, it's like probably, and it's funny because like even when I think when a lot of people do that, they don't keep the schedule either. There's weeks on, weeks off, and I think this has kept us doing it, and it's great. And I think that alone has been worthwhile. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I think it's funny too because I think one of the interesting things too, I think I've learned too after doing this for a year too, is just how hard it is to be the person you want to be. I think I think there is something to be said about that it's almost like there's like an unending amount of topics to talk about because there's like, that's the whole weird thing about self-improvement, right? Is we all want to be better always, like always moving forward, always improving. And I think that's just one of the things I realize is like, it is hard. Like when you really think about it, it's not an easy task.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's a funny little paradox that life gives us, where like we always have to be moving forward, and yet at the same time we always want to be there at the end, and we think that when we get to
Yeah.
that point it'll be over. But it's like you have to be moving forward, but also you have to believe that when you get to that point it'll be over, and you just have this crazy paradox going on all the time.
Yeah, it's like these like mental gymnastics and games we have to play with ourselves at all times in order to, you know, be happy now, but also be moving forward, but also have motive. It's a very odd sort of paradox that we live in. But that's
Mm-hmm.
being a self-aware creature, right? Knowing that
Yeah.
we're gonna die.
Exactly. And it's been an absolute pleasure to do this over the past year because
Yeah.
we I mean, people may not know this from listening to the show, but like most of the times, it's not like we have planned very far in advance what episodes we're going to do. Usually we kind of pick out that topic that day, and oftentimes it's something very relevant to one of our lives. And uh,
I think at the most we planned out in a week because we talked on the phone and
because
had
we
an
had an
idea.
interview coming up with somebody.
Or yeah. I should say, yeah, that's right. That's true. The interviews are the longest planned
Yeah.
out. But other than that, yeah, no. Because
Yeah.
that requires coordination with other people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And also, it's like, I mean, oftentimes we kind of talk about, at least I think it's kind of like deep relational stuff, especially for guys, because like guys are very macho. We're supposed to be very tough. We're supposed to have stuff figured out. And so, like, for guys, we're able to talk about stuff that's deeper, problems that are going on in life, and just kind of put it all out on the table because why not?
Yeah, what's the difference? What's the harm? Ain't gonna hurt anything, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think you're right, though. I think for a lot of people, that tendency to sort of keep it in is a huge burden to like being able to sort of let themselves be who they want to be, right? And move forward and develop. It makes it difficult.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
today we will talk about all the things we got from this year. I mean, I would say first off, for anybody who, is tired of paying for counseling, just start a podcast with a friend.
Yeah, dude, that seriously helps. That's funny.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
was very helpful. It's funny, dude. Well, you know what it is? It's like that consistency too, and and somebody you can just talk to about what's bothering you, the things that are bothering you.
Yeah.
As
Plus,
specific as you want to be.
we've known each other for a long time, and like we're able to to help each other out because of that. but also recording them. So then when you're not available, I can go back and listen to a recording and I can get the same breakthroughs as when we were talking the same. It was great. Yeah. All right.
Well, you know what's funny about that too, though, is that, I think part of it is that, we both have different enough interests too that we tend to have slightly different views on things that really, because honestly, I'm dead serious. Like, there's been so many times when either we've been talking or I've listened back to an episode, I'm like, that was such a good point that he made. And it's something I didn't think about because maybe you read it in the book that I didn't read, or maybe you just thought of it on the spot, whatever. But like, I think having that, they always say two heads are better than one, right? Because it gives you another perspective on it. But it's also a perspective I trust because it's my friend and it's somebody I know real well. And I think that's also crucial.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So now that we've gone over that stuff, what stuff have we learned this year? I mean, I can say probably one of the biggest things I got from this year was the small delights. Like,
oh God, yeah.
Without even question, that has made such a night and day difference. And there were a couple times this year when I stopped doing it, and it was so noticeable that I stopped doing it. So I got back on the horse, and then like it just makes such an enormous difference.
You know what I really liked about that too, honestly? I was thinking about this just the other day, actually, which is funny. Because that was such a huge difference and it's so easy. But what I really liked about it too is it just showed me how simple it is to make yourself more aware of something by simply just reinforcing it over and over again and reminding yourself to pay attention. All of a sudden, you really start to see the world differently. And it really proves to you that like the way we see the world is so much influenced by our own attitude and our own like mental state. And that's plastic. It's not fixed. You can change it. And I think that was like probably the biggest like epiphany, right, that you could have from that, because it was like a practical, real, example of it, not this sort of like, high-minded theoretical stuff.
Yeah, and it's like all these books nowadays are like change your life in 30 minutes or change your, like 24 hours and you'll learn a complete program, like all this stuff. But small delights is something like literally 5 minutes a day will change your life, and you'll notice it after day 1, day 2, day 3.
Yeah.
So why don't we just tell everybody how it's done in case this is their first episode or they haven't heard us say it before.
Oh,
you
good
want
call. Yeah.
to describe it?
Yeah, sure. Sure. So yeah, the small delights, it's very easy. Basically, I prefer at the end of the day, I think you were doing the same, but at the end of the day, in a notebook, just try to jot down 3 things that were delightful that day, or small pleasures, and small, right? Small pleasures, small delights. The sunset was beautiful. You had a really good cup of coffee, a great conversation with a friend. It could be even just things like, especially at first, if it's hard to figure them out, because we went through this too, right? It could even be like, well, the drive to work wasn't as bad as usual, something like that. But like, the point is to make yourself more aware of the pleasures and the delights in everyday life that we overlook because we're distracted, stressed, upset, negative. And it's impossible to state the value of this and the impact it had. It really is for such a simple exercise. It takes literally 5 minutes. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah, and it seems like how could something like that make a difference? But I think there was a time when you stopped doing it for a little while too, and we both noticed that like the times when we didn't do it, there's such a drastic difference. Because it's not just that you're writing down 3 good moments of your day. It's while you had those moments during the day, you're enjoying them, and then also at night when your mind is going to be open and it can do whatever, you're thinking about those 3 best moments of your day right before you're going to sleep, and it's like, now you have all this opportunity to enjoy the pleasures of your life, whereas before they occurred, but you were never able to enjoy them.
And the other thing I noticed too, I know you said this before too, but when you start doing it too, you start to tell yourself to like, oh, that's delightful, to keep your eye out for these delightful things during the day, and you start to become more aware of them. And it is funny. When I did stop, dude, it's funny how fast our brains switch back to the old way of thinking. Like, I remember because I stopped at one point for like a week or 2 because we were away, and like, at first I kept noticing them, but then I wasn't reinforcing it with the writing down, and like you start to drift back into that same old way of thinking, and it's like, it's really funny. But I think something I learned from that too over the past years, I think, happiness and a good life, they take work. It takes effort. It's not just going to happen. And I think that's something we all, for so many people, just think like, I should just be happy, or I should just have this. And it's like, you got to do stuff. You got to put effort in for that to happen.
Yeah, so definitely, like it's like that quote that it's success is always intentional. Like
Yeah.
it always requires intention, focus, effort. But on the other hand, oftentimes those things that we desire in life are already here. Like for
Yeah.
instance, from the small delights, something like I always wanted when I would watch the commercials or movies and see the people like curling up with a cup of coffee and a book. Like I desired that so much.
Oh, it's a great feeling.
And now that I practice small delights, I have that every day because like I'm
Yeah.
present there when I have my cup of coffee with my book. And then I get to relive it again before I go to sleep. It's like now I have that. I had that before, I just didn't notice it, but now I actually have that and it's awesome.
We said it there too, right? It's the, I swear to God, that one little thing really does like it emphasizes so many important facts about living a good life and being happy. And part of it is being present, right? Being aware in the moment of what's going on and why it matters. But it's also too, I think the other thing I think we both really realize too, and that's part of the delights is also sort of touches on this, it's just gratitude, the importance of becoming more aware of what you're grateful for, thankful for, and acknowledging it and saying it, whether it's writing it down or saying it out loud, but not letting these things just slip by. Because when you acknowledge it, just like the small delights, when you write it down and when you re-experience it, you're forcing yourself to be present and aware of that and enjoy the feeling and enjoy that moment, right? And I think that's so crucial.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I believe that the universe is I believe that the universe is kind of like me. Like if I buy something for somebody and I give it to them and they don't say thank you, I'm not going to buy them something again. But if I buy
Yeah.
something for them and I give it to them and they can't stop thanking me, I'm going to be like, I'm going to buy them some more stuff. And I just imagine the universe is like that too. Like if I'm thankful to the universe, it's going to want to give me more stuff.
I think it's a good way to think about that, right? Because there is that idea of balance, right? Things do balance out, and they balance out because there's all these different interactions, and when you add to those interactions, you're going to get more back. That's just
Mm-hmm.
how it happens, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's positive or negative.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I guess the next thing that I learned this year, or do you want to share something that you learned?
No, no, go ahead. You see what
Okay.
you have on your mind.
So
I'm good. I'll,
the
I'll go.
next one that I learned is that there's no finish line.
Yeah.
Like
No, zero.
because like I've been so goal oriented my whole life, and like always I had these goals that I thought that like when I get there, that'll be it. Like I'll get there, and then that'll be it, and I'll get there. And like I always trick myself into thinking that once I get there, then everything will be good, and it never is. So like fortunately, I think it comes with age. Is that like I start to get there enough times and realize that it never ends. So like just being happy on the journey there, and then also celebrating when I get there and setting new goals. I think that's something that I've definitely learned.
No, I think it's a good point, right? That, I think it's such a flawed way of thinking to think that there is an end, there is a finish line. Because when you think that way too, and you do get to one of those goals, and then you're like, I still have to do shit after this. Damn it. Like there's still more to do. There always will be more to do. And so I think learning that idea of learning to value the journey, right? To value being alive and living, not trying to make it some race that you're trying to finish, because there is no way to end that race, right? And that's why
Mhm.
people get caught up in weird things like, like buying all kinds of crap, or just collecting money because like they think they got to win, but there's nothing to win.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think that's a
Yeah.
good one.
And it's also like learning to be there during the journey. Like so
Yeah.
often when I was younger, I would ignore the journey because I was trying to get to the destination. And especially for like some of the things where the journey was something that I actually wanted, but once I got to that spot, that was like the destination was the next goal. And so it's actually kind of slowing down a little bit to be like, hey, this is the part where I learn and it's difficult and it's repetitive and I'm doing the same thing every day. But guess what? This is exactly what I want to be doing. So I might as well just enjoy it.
Yeah, just do it and enjoy it, right? I like that.
Mhm.
It's funny too, because I think it's like such a big part of it too is just sort of being more comfortable with yourself and realizing that, like, I think one of the things I really learned this year too was like the being more comfortable with myself, but also recognizing that most of the limitations I was setting on myself were self-imposed. That was one of the biggest things for me too. And like all these little things help me start to see that. And a lot of it was just mood and stuff and attitude. But like it really is true. Like I think so much of our problems are self-created. And we talked about that before, like the world we create, right? That we interpret our reality. I think so many of us, it's so sad, make this reality where we can't win when there's no reason to.
Isn't it crazy, like the limits that we put on ourselves we think because we think that they're actually there.
Yeah, yeah.
You know?
We've been told they're there, or
Yeah.
we've been trained to
It's
think
like
that way, and we
literally
never
who's
really
who's
broke through.
stopping any one of us from being a billionaire? Like nobody's actually like, no, that person can't do it. Like Elon Musk is not like, not him, no way, not him. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's funny too. It's like people who, like, I remember, when I was in college, running into people that would like, oh, I would love to move to this state or that state. And it's like, well, why don't you? And it's like, well, my family's not there. And it's like, well, that's the whole point of making a choice, right? Do you, just is living there more important or not? Like, you lose stuff, but it's
That's the
just
whole
funny,
point of
but
making a choice. Yeah.
yeah, you're choosing between things.
Mm-hmm.
But I know that I think you know, I actually, and one other thing too that's funny is like, I think for doing this for a year too, one of the most important things I learned too is like the things all are little things that we all struggle with. That I think it's funny because they're all like these little, seemingly simple things, but they take a lot of work and they're difficult. But everyone can do it, and everyone can make it better. You can always start now, and I think that's important. Yeah,
Definitely. Like no matter how messed up everything is, you can always make it better by
yeah,
intentionality.
yeah.
I think it's really remarkable how much of a difference life can be when you actually put effort into it. Like
No,
when you
definitely.
have intention and a direction and you actually work towards it. Like it's almost mind-boggling because before you do that, you can't even imagine what's possible. And then once you start doing it, it's just like, wow, I can do that. If I can do that, then I can do something. Like it's just crazy.
Well, what's funny? It's like because before you do that, what you always find is people um, trying to impose false control on their lives, right? By like organizing their room or doing this or that, right? Or blaming things. But once you start to really actually empower yourself and make changes, you start to realize that you have control over your life and that you can make it better. And I think that's the most probably wonderful feeling in the world, right? Is that you have agency, you have ability, and you just got to do it. And you're right, any situation, no matter how bad it is, it can be improved. And oftentimes the only reason that it's not is because the person in it has given up and chosen to go the other way, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Definitely. So another thing that occurred to me because we did an episode on it and we talk about it every once in a while is just like contemplating death. Like I think that it's
Oh,
something that most people don't really do. But today I was actually watching Blues Brothers, the movie, and there are some people in that movie who are
good
no
movie.
longer
Yeah.
there are some people in that movie who are no longer here. And so I was like, man, like they were living when they made that, they're not living now. And then I started thinking about it. I was like, most people who have ever been alive are not living now. So like I'm not
Yeah.
participating in this thing that most of humanity has already participated in. You know? And so it's kind of like it's this mind-bending experience because it's just like it seems unnatural, but it's the most natural thing ever. But the thoughts and the fears that we have say that, oh, it's not real, but it's the most natural thing that we have. And so just trying to like
Oh,
wrap
yeah.
my head around that and come to grips with my own mortality and then live my life in the best possible way so that when I do reach that point, I'll know I have done everything in my power to live the best life I could have.
Yeah, I mean, no, I like that. And I think, it's funny. It's funny that you mentioned that too, because like I was thinking about that too, that like it's interesting to think that they lived in a time too that's so radically different from now, especially when you think of people that lived like 200 years ago, or no planes, no cars, or 500 years ago, or 1,000 years ago. It's really interesting to think about how, on the one hand, how different their world was, because there's so many people in the world now. There's like almost what, like 8 billion or something. We have all this technology, so the world's very different, but the problems were the same. That always strikes me as interesting, dude. Like you look at we talk a lot about like the Stoics, the existentialists. You look at these ancient thinkers from, who were alive in like, couple hundred BC or, 200 AD. And the problems they're identifying and the questions they're asking are the same goddamn questions we're still asking today, right? The same struggles we have. So I think the fact that like our ideas can still be valuable is really interesting to me. I find that really fascinating. And I think it speaks to also the fact that we are mortal, right? That we don't live forever, and that we have this short time where we try to make it right and try to do the best we can.
Yeah. And also looking back, it kind of gives us an idea of how good we have it nowadays. So I just read this book SPQR about Rome, and like it was so violent back then. And like everybody was poor and going hungry. Like those are things that exist in our world, but not nearly as much as they existed then. Like pretty much most politicians were murdered. Like it was just crazy. And so like just seeing
that's literally how you lost your seat. You're like always killed.
Yeah, it's absurd. And so like just seeing that and seeing how good we have it, it helps with perspective. And that's something that I try and remind myself every morning is perspective. Because, as rough as you may have it in America, guess what? Still better than a lot of other places. And it's just, there's always somebody worse off, always somebody better off, but you can definitely be grateful that you are where you are.
Well, you know what I think is so important about perspective, what you just mentioned there too, is like, when you lose perspective, you also lose a clear grasp of what you do have. When you have perspective, you have a grasp of what you do have, because I think we forget that all the time. Like when we're really negative or depressed, right? We think we can't do anything. We forget that we can learn whatever we want. We forget the resources we have. I have the internet. I have access to all this information. I can read books. I can do this and that. I can go take courses. Like we forget that there's all these ways we can improve ourselves, build our skills, do things. I could go take a walk, I could go running, whatever, and I think that is crucial. That perspective reminds us of what we have. It's also sort of a confirmation of what we have and what we're then therefore able to do, a potential or possibility, right? Mm-hmm. I like that one.
Yeah. And like also realizing, so like Charlie Munger, he's Warren Buffett's business partner, two of the wealthiest people in the world, and arguably some of the best investors ever. But one thing that he said was that, he's like, Warren and I have outperformed the market pretty much every year for a good number of years. And yet every year somebody does better than us. That's like a very humbling thought, especially for a lot of us people who are, in the wide part of the bell curve, because like, we're always like, man, I want to be, and it's like, even the best in the world has people doing better than him. So like, that's a very, very humbling thought, but it also gives you a lot of flexibility, because all of a sudden you don't have to be the best. Like that was one thing that I got this year that really like helped with a bit of this jealousy that I still was dealing with, where like some people were outperforming me and it's like, oh, this isn't, but like, then I was like, there's always going to be people outperform me. And it's like, okay, that's awesome. Have I done all that I can do? Yes. Okay, great. Let's move on.
Well, I think that's the other thing, right? It's being the best you, not trying to compare yourself to others. And I think that was one of the best things, I learned this year too, was making self-comparisons, not making comparisons to the outside world. Am I doing better than I was a month ago, 5 months ago, 5 years ago? And looking at it that way, I think is crucial, right? And it's funny though. I think with that too, one of the other things I think we're doing this every week. One of the things I think I've also realized too is just how, like, we say it a lot, but just how important it is to identify what's valuable to us. Because you really, we all talk about wanting to be successful or have a better life or be happy, but so few people, I think, could really tell you what that looks like for them. They haven't ever actually gone the next step of thinking it through. And, like we talk about the importance of like writing your goals down, right? Because when you do that, when you identify what's valuable to you, you start planning, you start making things happen. You can live in a way that's intentional. You can have clear results. And I think that's, it's essential. And so few people could actually tell you what a good life looks like, what it means to be happy, I think. And it just speaks to the fact that they haven't really thought about it. They don't actually know.
And it's even more important nowadays because there's so many distractions. Like boredom used to be a thing, and now people say they're bored, but they're really just distracted.
Yeah.
Like boredom used to be a thing when there was literally nothing to do. It was pouring. I mean, that's why you save money for a rainy day, so you could go to the arts and crafts store and buy something to do. Nowadays, everybody just pulls out their phone. They swipe through Instagram or Facebook or play some games, or they're just distracted. And it's so easy to be distracted nowadays that I think Les Brown says something along the lines of most of us never realize our greatness because we get distracted by secondary activities. And that is, to me, is such a huge thing, because it's like everybody can reach their greatness. It's kind of the thing that you came to this world to do, but if you don't focus on that and develop that, then and you get distracted by secondary activities, then you lost it. Like they say the graveyard is like the richest place on earth, because that's where all these people's dreams went to die. And it's like getting to that point where you don't want to leave this earth without realizing your dreams.
Actually, no, it's funny. One of the things you mentioned, I think this was not that long ago, but one of the things you've said a couple times is like, asking yourself, if I only had 6 months left to live, would I do this? I really like that. Was one of the things that I use now a lot, because that idea of sort of, living without regret, doing what you want to do, doing what's right for you, and using that as sort of a tool to help you identify, what matters the most now. What is the most important thing I should be doing right now? As opposed to, when I'm faced with options, or I'm faced with a lot of different choices.
Dude, and it's cool when you do that enough and then you start taking action on it to get to the point where it's like, I really wouldn't change that much.
Yeah.
Then it's like, this is a cool life.
Yeah, you're living the life you want, right? And I think that's the other thing too, is I think, again, I think just like, it does take work, but it's fun to do too, because it makes things better. I think that's one of the most important things, is like, people get so caught up in the negative, they forget that all they have to do is start, and it makes it better, and it makes everything better.
Well, that's a great point, because I think a lot of people turn to self-help and philosophy and meditation and all these different things because they have this situation. My life sucks. I don't want it to suck anymore. That's basically, I mean, that's
Please,
why
God,
I got
make it not suck.
Yeah, that's why I got into meditation and like self-help and all this stuff. I'm like, my life sucks. How can I make it not suck? And sometimes people get kind of trapped towards like leaning towards depression and kind of getting stuck there. And so another thing that I learned this year was reading that book by Martin Seligman. He had a book, Flourish. The other one was, I forget the name of it right now, but learned helplessness or learned optimism. Yeah. So basically, how like a lot of this stuff in a lot of the feelings, the actions with depression are very similar to learned helplessness. So like once you get to that point where you believe you can actually change it and then start making that change, it completely lifts the depression. And this may not work for everybody, but I know in my own life, when I was feeling depressed, it was because I felt helpless about a situation. And so like starting to move in the direction of confronting that situation and make progress, like you were talking about, that really helped to change everything.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point too, because you're starting to take control, right? You're starting to make choices and make a difference, right, in your life. And I think that's important. And you're right. I think for me, that really helps as well. Like, yeah, it might not work for everybody. I think it works for a lot of people. And at the very least, it will improve things somewhat, right? Even if it doesn't make them all better.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's also nice too, just to see that, I think one of the other things I learned from this year too is just that we all struggle with this. I think you look at all these philosophies, all these self-help books, all these, it's like everybody struggles with this. You're not alone. And I think that's also important because it makes it easier to realize, and it also makes it more easier to see that it's within your power, right? To change it, to make it better, that we all have the capacity to. And I think that's something we forget very easily as well.
Yeah, it's definitely been an interesting year because, when we started this, it was during COVID and everything was closed, and like, yeah, what a
and
year.
They sort of opened and then sort of closed again.
What a year. What a year. We actually, when Danny and I started doing this, we would go and we would meet up at the one mall that actually had seats inside of it because everything else was closed. You couldn't sit anywhere else. We found this one mall that actually had seats that you could sit at. They were 6 feet apart, but so that way we could go and do this stuff. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. What a time.
It's awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So anything else you learned from this year?
I mean, a lot.
Yeah. I also learned, and it wasn't just this year, but I think this year I really got a better grasp on it than before because I saw the power of it, is just never giving up.
Yeah. Oh God.
Like before, giving up was an option. And so like now giving up is just not an option. It's just like if you want something, you just go for it. Like it doesn't matter. You just go until
you make it happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think with that too is just recognizing too, I think, another important thing too, we said it a lot, but like, learn to say no, because when you're going for something, you're making choices and you can't do everything. And I think that's really important too, because like a lot of people get bogged down by these self-imposed obligations from the outside world and stuff that just get in the way. They're distracting. Even feeling like you have to like somebody else's stuff on Instagram or something, all those things that really do get in the way, or that you have to meet your friends or your families at these places at these times. Like figuring out what you want and going for it is crucial. And I think part of that too is making, again, it comes down to making choices. And I think it's so important. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. I was, when you just mentioned that thing about Instagram, I was watching this behind the scenes thing about a guy who paints models because I do that for fun to relax. So he was talking about it. Like it was basically one whole week behind the scenes. And he was talking about how like, this day he had to post all this stuff to Instagram. And then there was like another thing that happened in the industry. And he felt because he has a voice, he now had to respond to that. And I was like, oh my God, that's so much pressure. Like, geez.
Yeah, it is. For something that was relaxing that you enjoyed, right?
Yeah, right.
It's like it makes it this horrible thing.
Yeah,
that's too funny.
So crazy. Yeah, and I guess another thing that I learned is the importance of good friends.
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah, so like we're very lucky that we've known each other a long time, but also that we've kept in contact. And I think it's something that's more and more rare nowadays for people to have good friends and to be able to talk with them. And like and just like the benefit of it. And I would encourage people to, like, if you don't have at least one good friend, like start trying to have one. And you can even have like the practice friend until you get the next one, the training friend, like until you can have one friend until you find the real one that works. Because it's
I think you're right though. It's like, it's true and it's sad. Like I really value our relationship because it's hard to find someone you can be open with, honest with, and not worry about how they're gonna think about you. You know what I mean? Not worry about their interpretation of you because you already have that fixed. It's not like, and that way you can really work through things, difficult things together, and it really helps, and it's not, everything doesn't have to be awkward and embarrassing and stuff like people make it out to be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's really awesome that, for anybody who's been following the podcast for, I still can't believe, for a whole year now.
Yeah. I know it doesn't feel like it.
Danny and I just used to meet up. Like we would just meet up once a week and we would just talk about our problems. And, Danny has a really good philosophical background. I've read a whole bunch of self-help books. And so like we were having these conversations and we're just like, wow, we can really talk about these things. Let's make a
Yeah.
podcast.
Let's just do it, right? It's a
Yeah.
good reason to do something though.
Mhm.
But it also, I mean, importantly, also kept us doing it, which is that also mattered a lot, right? Because then you have more of a reason to even motivate yourself to do it. And especially at first. Now it's like without thought, but you know what I mean?
Mhm.
It helps at the early time to do
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. Because there's not like this whole year, there hasn't been a week that's gone by without us talking.
No,
And
it's been a good year.
yeah, exactly. Because we've been
Yes.
talking about our problems. We've been talking through our problems. And
Yeah.
that's actually a good insight too, is that just because we were moving past problems, it didn't mean that there weren't any more problems.
Yeah.
So like
Yeah.
there will always be more problems, but being able to address them when they come up, that's the important part.
Well, you know, and I think it's like, and we talk, you know, addressing them and also sitting with them sometimes, you
Mm.
know, kind of just facing the problem and living with it for a while and figuring out, because sometimes, you know, it's like, it's easy to identify sort of the problem, but not the problem of the problem. You know what I mean? Like not
Mhm.
the root of it or not the cause of it. So sometimes you have to sit with it, or sometimes you sit with it for a while because the fact is it takes a little while to work through it and work out of it. You know, they
Mhm.
don't just go away. Yeah.
That's a really good point, is that you know sometimes you just have to sit in being uncomfortable with the problem. I think
Yeah.
also we learned from the way of the artist, or the artist's way, journaling, like journaling
Oh
through the
God. Yeah.
problem. And
Yeah.
that's been really helpful for me because often like I'm just always amazed with the capacity of the brain. It will literally answer any
It
questions
is.
you ask it. If you ask it really bad questions like why does my life suck, it'll find answers for you. But if you ask it
Yeah.
really good questions, it'll find the most awesome answers. So like whenever I'm facing problems nowadays, I sit down and I journal and I ask, like I write out a question, you know, how can I solve this problem? And you know, before long it comes.
Well, you know, the great thing about writing too is like you get you get to the question that's important that you want to get to, right? Because like you said, you can ask it bad questions that'll give you bad answers. And a lot of I think getting through our problems and progressing is also about asking the right questions and identifying the right questions. And that takes work too, right? And journaling is such an effective way to get there. You know, I mean, we talked about that in a lot of different capacities, but like when you're struggling with relationships, you know, using your journaling skills to imagine it from that person's perspective, or to just like vent your anger in a way where you get it out, but not where you hurt other people's feelings. And you can think about it first and get the right perspective or the right sort of view of the situation before you go in guns blazing, you know, like, and
Mm-hmm.
make it worse.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you have goals, writing them down.
Oh God, yeah, that's really helpful too.
That was that was one of my favorite things that I heard this year. I think it was Jim Rohn or somebody who was like, "Okay, here's how we here's how we set goals. Figure out what you want and write it down." And it's like that
That's
was
it.
the
Then
most
do it.
straightforward thing. But like there are whole books about goal setting. There are whole courses about goal setting, and it's literally that simple.
You know, it's funny too. A lot of times you get those books, like those entire books about goal setting and stuff, and all it is a bunch of BS that you start focusing on instead of the actual goals. You focus on bullet point charts and you focus on, you know,
Mm-hmm.
setting that up and this and that. It's like you're not actually doing the thing that you should be doing. And
Right.
I think a lot of that is like it's like that feeling better because you're procrastinating, but distracting yourself with little tasks that feel good, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the problem is because we expect books to be so long. I heard this from this guy Alex Becker because I followed him for a long time on YouTube and a whole bunch of stuff. Because he, you know, he started from nothing and then he became very, very successful. And you know, he had like a New York Times bestseller book and everything like that. And he's like, the book that I wrote could have literally been like a 2-page blog post. But the
Yeah.
thing is, it
Yeah.
never would sell. So I had to
No,
write this much extra stuff just so it could be a bestseller. And he's like, that's how every other book is out there. Most of the time, you don't need that stuff.
no, most of it's just filler. It's
Mm-hmm.
extra stuff, right? That you don't really, it's not the main point or the heart of the matter, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's been an awesome year though. It
Certainly
has.
has. Certainly has. Yeah. So I think that's that. I think we'll just call it there unless you have anything else.
Yeah, like I
All
said,
right.
I'm looking forward to the next year too.
Season 2. Wow.
Boom.
Crazy. It's been,
Can't wait.
I still can't believe it's been a whole year. This has been absolutely phenomenal.
It
Um,
has, man. Time goes
yeah.
by fast.
Mhm.
It's
Thank you
weird.
to all you guys for listening, for watching,
Absolutely.
for joining us for all of this. Hopefully, this coming year we'll have some more interactive stuff going on. We could certainly try and do that.
We will do that. That sounds good.
All right.
Now that we've said it, it's done.
We have to write it down first.
Obviously, yeah,
Yeah.
that's true. That's true.
All right. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us for episode 52 of the Existential Stoic podcast, available on YouTube, on all of the podcasting services. I'm Randy. That's Danny. I'll see you later, Danny.
Later, Randy.